Let's kick off our journey tonight in the sun-drenched, olive oil-drenched land of ancient Greece, the birthplace of big ideas like philosophy and democracy. But beyond the glory, ordinary lives were filled with sweat, hunger, and struggle. Plus all those marble statues that somehow never bothered with trousers. But behind the epic tales of heroes, thinkers, and gleaming temples was a far grittier reality. The same society that laid the foundations for much of Western culture also forced its everyday people into a grind that would break most of us in a single day. Before we dive in, if you're enjoying this, feel free to hit that like button and subscribe, only if it feels right to you. And drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. I love seeing how far-flung this community is. Alright, lights low, maybe a quiet fan humming in the background, and let's step back in time together. Your day in ancient Greece starts not with a gentle phone alarm, but with the sun turning your modest home into a slow-roasting oven. Life without comfort. Most houses are simple affairs. Walls of sun-baked mud bricks or rough-hewn stone, tiny windows without glass, just wooden shutters to block curious goats or let in the occasional merciful breeze. There's no insulation, no air conditioning, and personal space is a joke unless you count the spot where the family goat hasn't decided to nap. You get up early, not out of virtue, but because lying down any longer is unbearable. In summer, those thick walls soak up heat all day and radiate it back at you by dawn, turning your bed into a hot plate. Come winter, the same walls become an icebox. You're huddled under a thin wool blanket, praying you don't wake up stiff and blue. Sleep happens on a thin reed mat or a sack stuffed with straw. No real pillow, just a folded cloak or your own arm. And if the bedbugs or lice gave you a break last night, consider yourself blessed by the gods. No plumbing means no quick morning splash at the sink. You either trudge to the nearest public fountain in town or, if you're out in the countryside, haul water from a well in heavy clay jars balanced on your head or shoulder. One slip and you've wasted an hour of effort and probably cracked the jar. Actual bathing, that's usually saved for evening, if it happens at all. In the morning, you might just dash cold water on your face and arms. Then comes the classic Greek cleanse. Rub olive oil all over your skin to loosen dirt and sweat. Then scrape it off with a curved bronze tool called a strigil. It's like exfoliating with cooking oil and a dull blade. Effective enough, but hardly refreshing. And definitely not private. Your whole family shares the same few rooms, sleeping, eating, bickering, all in one open space. The street outside doubles as your front porch, gossip hub, and garbage chute. By the time you're up and semi-clean, your back already aches, sweat is beading, and your simple tunic is clinging uncomfortably. And believe it or not, this is the easiest part of your day. Breakfast follows, though calling it a meal feels generous. It's so sparse that modern fasting trends would seem indulgent by comparison. The centerpiece is maza, flat cakes made from barley flour. Imagine starting your hardest day with food that tastes like dust, mixed with water, baked on hot stones or in the embers of last night's fire. Dense, dry, and about as thrilling as chewing cardboard. You might soften it by dipping it in weak wine, because straight water could make you sick, and nobody has time for that. Wine mixed with water is the default drink for everyone, kids included, purely for safety. If you're reasonably well off, You might add a couple of dried figs, a handful of olives, or a smear of soft goat cheese. But for most people, plain maza, and maybe yesterday's leftovers if the flies haven't claimed them first. No coffee, no fresh fruit unless it's in season and you're near an orchard. No honey unless you've got connections with a beekeeper. You eat quickly, standing or squatting. No chairs, no forks, no leisurely scrolling. And if you're a woman in many households, you wait until the men finish before getting your share, often eating separately with the children. The same culture that later threw lavish drinking parties and wrote poetry about fine food treated breakfast as pure fuel, tasteless, tough, and over in minutes. You force it down because you've got a long, hot day of work ahead and collapsing isn't an option. With the barley brick swallowed and a mouthful of watered wine for courage, it's time for the rest of your grooming. Soap hasn't been invented yet, so the olive oil and strigil routine is your main defense against filth. You pour cold water from a basin if you're at home, or join the crowd at the public fountain. Slather on the oil, scrape it away, and hope you got most of the grime. Shampoo, body wash, forget it. Sponges are a luxury import. Teeth, get whatever attention you can spare. Maybe chewing on a frayed twig, rinsing with diluted vinegar, or rubbing with a bit of ash. Toothbrushes and paste are centuries away, so dental problems are common and painful. Body odor is just part of life. Strong perfumes made from herbs or resins are available only to the rich. Most people settle for a quick dab of scented oil before heading out. Clothes don't get washed often, usually pounded clean in a stream with ashes and fuller's earth when there's time. Your tunic might not have seen proper cleaning since the last big festival. Hygiene, in short, is more about ritual and basic decency than actual freshness. You do what you can to not offend the gods or your neighbors too badly. Finally, clothes. The ancient Greek wardrobe is gloriously simple, clothing and style. A large rectangle of linen or wool, cretonne for lighter wear, himation for outer layering, draped, folded, belted, and pinned into place. No tailoring, no buttons, no pockets. A strong gust of wind can turn a dignified citizen into an accidental exhibitionist. Underwear isn't standard, and support garments for women are basically non-existent unless you're an athletic Sparta. Footwear? If you're fortunate, simple leather sandals with straps. If not, bare feet on scorching stones, dusty paths, and whatever animals or market stalls have left behind. Comfort isn't the priority. Survival and modesty are. And with that, you're dressed, fed, and as clean as you're going to get. The sun is climbing, the day is waiting, and ancient Greece is ready to test you all over again. Your daily walk to work, or wherever you're headed, feels like crossing a giant frying pan under the midday sun. The streets are a mess of dust, donkey droppings, and whatever else the market vendors or passing carts have dropped. No sidewalks, no shade, unless you duck under a rare portico, and definitely no sunscreen. It's 450 BCE after all, and nobody's cracked the code on UV protection yet. Hats? Only if you're a field worker or a sailor. Most folks just tough it out. The relentless Hygiene sun doesn't discriminate. It bakes everyone equally, philosopher or fisherman. By lunchtime, your skin is lobster red on the shoulders and neck, your feet are caked in grime, and your linen chiton has glued itself to you in awkward, impossible spots. Public nudity isn't a scandal here, it's routine. You might stroll past the gymnasium where athletes train completely bare, muscles gleaming with oil, or see a politician gesturing wildly in a toga that's one loose fold away from disaster. If you're rich, your clothes might boast rare dyes, deep purple from snail glands or bright saffron yellow. But for the average person, undyed linen or wool in shades of beige, grey, or dirt brown. Fancy colors are a luxury wasted on laborers who mend nets or haul amphorae all day. So there you are, wrapped like a loosely folded scroll, praying to Hermes that a sudden wind doesn't undo your brooches in front of the temple priestess. And the kicker? You're barely halfway through your daily grind. Now, let's talk about something every free male citizen couldn't escape: military service. It wasn't a career choice. It was your obligation, your badge of belonging, and often your fast track to an unmarked grave. In places like Athens or Sparta, if you were a free-born man, you were a soldier by default. Training started young. In Athens, you'd spend your late teens in the ephebia. 2 solid years of drills. Courage was not a choice. It was survival. Weapons practice and learning to hold the line in a phalanx. That tight formation of overlapping shields and thrusting spears where your survival depended on the guy beside you not panicking. Sparta took it further with the infamous agoge. Boys were taken from their families at 7, subjected to hunger, harsh discipline, theft exercises to build cunning, and constant physical tests until only the strongest endured. War was constant. The Peloponnesian rivals, Persian invasions, squabbles over trade routes with neighboring city-states. Peace was just the intermission. Even great thinkers like Socrates donned armor and marched into battle, shield in hand, not just clever arguments. Gear? You bought it yourself. Wealthy hoplites sported bronze helmets with horsehair crests, molded breastplates, greaves, massive round shields, and long spears. Poorer men made do with whatever they could scrape together. Maybe a leather cap and a lighter shield, meaning they often ended up in the riskier skirmish roles. No state-issued kit here. If you couldn't afford proper armor, you rolled the dice in the back rows or as light infantry. When not actively fighting, you drilled, maintained weapons, debated tactics in the assembly, or pulled shifts rowing in the navy. Those sleek triremes needed hundreds of oarsmen, and citizen rowers kept the fleet moving. Come home. If you came home, and there was no support system, no medical care for veterans, no pensions, no counseling for the nightmares. Just scars, stories, and maybe a simple stone marker if your family could afford it. If being a man sounds demanding, life as a woman in most Greek city-states was outright confining. Their silence was the loudest sound in Greek households. In Athens especially, women had fewer rights than the painted vases decorating wealthy homes. No voting, no public office, no independent land ownership, and stepping out alone could spark rumors. Too many public sightings? People might assume you were a hetera, a high-class companion, or joke that you were secretly Spartan. Your day began before dawn, spinning wool into thread, weaving it into cloth, grinding barley into flour by hand, back-breaking work on a stone quern, fetching water, baking, supervising any household slaves, and tending children. You ran the entire home economy, but without recognition, wages, or vacation. Social outlets were scarce. No theater visits, no loitering at the agora, listening to debates, no gymnasium workouts. Respectable women stayed in the guinea corn, the women's section of the house, peeking at the world through screened windows. Education, basic literacy, if you were fortunate. Otherwise, training focused on household skills. Higher learning, philosophy, math, public speaking, was reserved for males. Marriages were arranged often when you were barely into your teens to a man old enough to be your uncle. Romance wasn't the point. Alliances, dowries, and producing legitimate heirs were. Your value hinged on bearing healthy sons to continue the family line. Sparta stood apart. Women there, trained physically, received education, and could inherit property, enjoying more freedom than anywhere else in Greece. But it came at a price. The whole society revolved around breeding tough soldiers. Your worth was tied to motherhood. Weak or few children brought shame. Even widows faced restrictions on remarriage and inheritance. The Greeks built temples to fierce goddesses like Athena, Artemis, and Hera, but mortal women were meant to embody quiet virtue, silent, secluded, obedient. We celebrate ancient Athens as democracy's cradle, and it did pioneer direct citizen rule. But let's not romanticize it. To join the ecclesia and vote, you needed to be a free adult male born to two Athenian parents. That excluded the vast majority: women, slaves, foreign residents, metics, and minors, easily 80–90% of the population. This wasn't government by the people. It was by a privileged minority of land-owning men. If you qualified, participation wasn't optional. Thousands gathered on the Nix Hill to debate and vote on everything from war declarations to budgets. No professional politicians, citizens rotated duties. A lottery system could draft you to manage the city's finances, serve on massive juries, 100 strong, or hold temporary office. Your local baker might command a fleet one year. Your superstitious neighbor could decide a capital case the next. Power checks existed too. Annoy too many people? Annual ostracism votes let citizens scratch a name onto pottery shards. Hit the threshold and you were banished for a decade. No appeal, just back up. Flawed as it was, exclusive, chaotic, prone to mob decisions. Athenian democracy empowered ordinary, eligible men in ways unseen before. It inspired later systems, but fairness, inclusivity, not here. Women had no say, tax-paying metics, voiceless, slaves who quarried marble for the Parthenon. Utterly silenced. Even outspoken philosophers like Socrates could face death for corrupting youth. Democracy flickered to life in Greece. But if you'd arrived hoping for universal rights, you'd have been handed a shard and told to write your own name. Slavery wasn't a dark secret in ancient Greece. It was the foundation. Freedom for some was built on chains for many. Even middling households often owned at least one or two slaves, not as a sign of extravagance, but because human ownership was as ordinary as olive trees. No racial basis defined it. Enslaved people came from everywhere: Thrace, Scythia, Asia Minor, Syria, or unlucky Greeks captured in war. Some were born into bondage. Others were war prisoners, piracy victims, or abandoned infants, exposed and picked up by traders. Markets thrived openly, with no moral qualms from most citizens. If you called Athens home, chances are you owned at least one slave, or several if your household had any means at all. They weren't a luxury. They were the engine keeping everything running. A typical slave might rise first to light the fire, grind the grain, cook the sparse meals, sweep the floors, mind the children, haul water from the fountain, trail behind you in the market carrying purchases, and then stand quietly in the corner during dinner parties, ready to refill cups or clear plates. In wealthier homes, educated slaves handled accounts, managed workshops, or even ran businesses while the citizen master spent evenings at symposia, reclining on couches, sipping watered wine, and debating the nature of the soul or the ideal state. The irony stings. The society that prided itself on freedom and reason rested squarely on forced labor. Conditions varied wildly, but cruelty was baked in. In the silver mines at Laurium, which funded Athens' fleet and glory, thousands of slaves, including children, toiled in nightmare shifts. They crawled through cramped, pitch-black tunnels barely wide enough for a body, swinging picks in choking dust laced with toxic fumes, emerging, if they emerged, broken and coughing blood. Many died young, their suffering converted directly into the coins that paid for democracy's temples and triremes. Some slaves were highly skilled, tutors teaching children grammar, music, or arithmetic, scribes copying scrolls, bankers managing ledgers. But status didn't equal safety. Every slave was property, subject to beatings, branding, sexual exploitation, sale, or summary execution without legal consequence. A few earned or bought their freedom, becoming metics with limited rights. But even freedmen carried obligations to former owners and could never achieve full citizenship. No voting, no political office, often no land ownership, just a fragile step up from the bottom. Remarkably, there was no significant push to end slavery. Great thinkers defended it outright. Aristotle, the towering mind behind logic and natural philosophy, argued that certain people were slaves by nature, suited only to obey. This wasn't fringe opinion, it was mainstream justification. The shining achievements of Greek culture, art, literature, governance, were inseparable from a system that stripped humanity from a huge portion of its population. Their voices weren't just ignored, they were deliberately silenced. Fall ill in ancient Greece, and your options were grim. There were no public hospitals or emergency rooms. Serious sickness meant bed rest at home, surrounded by family, hoping for the best. Care came from whatever folk wisdom circulated. A neighbor's poultice, a relative's herbal brew, or fervent prayers to Asclepius, god of medicine, sometimes involving a trip to one of his sanctuaries to sleep overnight in hopes of a healing dream. And yes, non-venomous snakes wandered the floors for symbolic comfort. Greek physicians, the best of them, blended observation, philosophy, and guesswork. The theory of four humors, blood, phlegm, yellow bile, black bile, dominated. Sickness arose from imbalance. Fever? Too much blood, bleed the patient. Persistent cough? Excess phlegm, prescribe fasting or emetics. Depression? Black bile overload, suggest exercise, diet changes, or seaside contemplation. Treatments leaned heavily on plants. Willow bark for pain, poppy for sleep or sedation, garlic for everything. Remedies could include boiled cabbage juice, vinegar soaks, or dubious animal-derived pastes. Surgery was rare and harrowing. No anesthesia beyond strong wine or opium. No understanding of infection. Tools were basic bronze or iron. A deep wound or broken bone often turned deadly from sepsis. Amputations required biting a strap while assistants held you down. Childbirth fell to midwives, experienced women using herbs and positioning, but maternal and infant mortality remained heartbreakingly high. One complication like hemorrhage or breech presentation could end mother, child, or both. Wealth bought better odds. A trained physician might visit with scrolls of knowledge and imported remedies. The poor relied on marketplace healers or sheer luck. Yet Greek medicine laid real foundations. Emphasis on diet, exercise, fresh air, and the Hippocratic oaths, do no harm ethic, endure today. Still, survival often hinged more on hope than science. Theatre in ancient Greece was no casual night out. It was a massive civic and religious event. Tragedy, comedy, and civic duty woven into festivals honoring Dionysus. In Athens, the Great Dionysia meant days of compulsory attendance for citizens, women, slaves, and foreigners largely barred. You'd pack into vast open-air amphitheaters like the Theatre of Dionysus, stone benches carved into hillsides, seating tens of thousands under blazing sun. A full program ran from dawn to dusk. 3 tragedies, often linked trilogies exploring fate, hubris, and divine retribution, followed by a bawdy satyr play, then comedies. No real breaks, just bring a cushion and endure. Tragedies by Aeschylus, Sophocles, or Euripides plunged audiences into raw emotion. Familial curses, war's horrors, gods toying with mortals. Spectators wept collectively, confronting shared fears. Comedies, especially Aristophanes, were savage satire, lampooning politicians, generals, intellectuals, even the gods, with crude jokes, political jabs, and oversized prosthetic phalluses. Actors, all male, playing women via masks, wore exaggerated costumes, elevated boots, and huge painted masks amplifying voice and expression. A chorus danced, sang, and commented like a raucous public opinion section. Audiences weren't passive. They cheered, jeered, hurled insults or olives at bad performances. Disruptive behavior could earn fines. This was serious cultural duty. At festival's end, judges awarded prizes, sometimes favoring outrageous comedy over profound tragedy. You've endured the emotional marathon of the theater, emerging raw and reflective. Now you drift into the agora, the pulsing marketplace, and civic square, the heart of civic life, and immediately get cornered by a barefoot man in a simple cloak, eyes gleaming. Tell me, what is piety? What is courage? Congratulations, you've met Socrates. One question from him could shake your entire belief system. Philosophy wasn't locked in ivory towers. It spilled into streets, gyms, and porticos. Athens buzzed with it. Public debates, impromptu interrogations, ideas clashing like shields. Socrates perfected the art of relentless questioning, exposing contradictions in everyday beliefs until interlocutors floundered. He'd stop merchants, politicians, anyone claiming knowledge, and dismantle their certainty. He wrote nothing. Students like Plato preserved his method and fate. Executed in 399 BCE for impiety and corrupting youth, though many suspect the real crime was embarrassing powerful men. Plato founded the academy, training minds in ideals, forms, and justice. Aristotle, his student, catalogued nature, ethics, politics. These weren't gentle seminars. Discussions were fierce, public, ego-bruising. Bystanders got dragged in. One careless opinion and you became Exhibit A in a lesson on the unexamined life. Philosophy birthed logic, ethics, scientific inquiry, political theory, but daily life meant constant intellectual sparring. Walk through Athens, and you risked a verbal takedown by some sandal-wearing gadfly who could make you question everything, including why you ever left the house. You've navigated it all, the debates, the duties, the dramas. You're articulate, engaged, respected, perhaps rising a little too prominently in the assembly or symposium circles. That's your classic blunder in ancient Athens, shining just a little too brightly. Popularity wasn't always a perk. It could straight up get you booted from the city for a full decade. No arrest, no hefty fine, no dramatic trial. Just exile, plain and simple, and entirely by the book. It was called ostracism, a deliberate feature of Athenian democracy designed to keep any one person from dominating. Every year, the assembly voted on whether to hold an ostracism that season. If they greenlit it, citizens grabbed potsherds, broken bits of pottery called ostraca, and scratched the name of whoever they wanted gone. Reach around 6,000 votes against you, pack your bags. You had 10 days to leave Attica. No appeals, no defense speech. Your crime, often nothing more than being too influential, too persuasive, or too successful. The targets were usually elite figures, generals who'd won big battles, politicians with swelling support, or statesmen whose integrity made everyone else look bad. Aristides, nicknamed the Just for his unimpeachable honesty, got ostracized partly because people were tired of hearing how flawless he was. One voter, who didn't recognize him, reportedly asked Aristides himself to write his name on the shard, complaining he was sick of the nickname. Themistocles, the brilliant strategist behind the naval victory at Salamis that saved Greece from Persia, later got the same treatment once his ego and ambition rubbed too many the wrong way. The twist? It wasn't forever. After 10 years, you could return as if nothing happened. Property intact, citizenship restored, no official stain on your record. A forced sabbatical to cool potential tyrants and protect the fragile balance of power. In practice, it sometimes punished excellence more than it prevented dictatorship. Ambition required careful calibration. Be capable and respected, but never so magnetic that your neighbors started sharpening pottery. Athens pioneered direct democracy, but it also invented a remarkably efficient predecessor to modern cancel culture, crowdsourced, annual, and backed by law. You didn't wonder if death would come early in ancient Greece. You wondered what form it would take life's fragile thread, and how much it would hurt on the way. Average life expectancy lingered around 30-35 years, heavily dragged down by sky-high infant and child mortality. 1 in 3 kids didn't reach adulthood. Disease, malnutrition, and the casual approach to sanitation claimed countless young lives. For those who survived childhood, threats multiplied. A minor cut could fester into sepsis. A random fever might spiral unchecked. Childbirth remained one of the leading killers of women, one hemorrhage or infection away from tragedy. Contaminated water, spread through communal fountains or open drains, carried constant risk. Cities turned into petri dishes during outbreaks. The Great Plague of Athens in 430 BCE, described in chilling detail by Thucydides, who caught and survived it, wiped out perhaps a third of the population, Pericles included. War provided another reliable reaper. Adult men faced repeated call-ups. Death in battle, from infected wounds or from exhaustion rowing triremes, was commonplace. No battlefield medics, no antibiotics, just cauterization, herbal poultices, and luck. Then there were the gods. Offend one, miss a festival offering, boast too loudly, or simply inherit some ancestral slight, and retribution could arrive as crop failure, shipwreck, madness, or a well-aimed thunderbolt. Proper burial mattered immensely. Families scraped together coins for Charon the ferryman, and rituals to ease the soul's passage. An unmarked grave or improper rites doomed shades to restless wandering. Death wasn't abstract or rare. It hovered daily, indifferent to status, wealth, or wisdom. The pantheon of Olympian gods looked magnificent in marble, but living with them was exhausting. Fear and faith. Zeus, Hera, Athena, Apollo, Artemis, Poseidon, and the rest weren't benevolent shepherds. They were powerful, capricious, and thin-skinned. Religion wasn't comfort. It was risk management. Daily life brimmed with small rites, libations before meals, household altars tended morning and night, prayers before any venture. Major festivals dotted the calendar, some joyous, many obligatory, with processions, sacrifices, and communal feasts to keep divine tempers in check. Sailors poured wine to Poseidon before boarding. Farmers invoked Demeter at planting. Warriors sacrificed to Ares, and often Athena, before campaign. Myths overflowed with cautionary tales. Mortals punished for hubris, forgotten offerings, or catching the wrong divine eye. Hereditary curses could plague families for generations. Sacred groves, springs, and caves teemed with nymphs and local spirits trespass carelessly and invite misfortune. Explanation for disaster was always retrospective. Which god did we slight? Was the sacrifice impure? Did someone speak blasphemy after too much wine? Temples dominated skylines. Oracles drew pilgrims, and myths shaped understanding of nature and human fate. Religion saturated everything: politics, theater, athletics, warfare. You didn't attend services out of devotion alone. You participated because survival demanded it. Fear and dependence walked hand in hand. So after the blistering heat, the monotonous barley cakes, the endless chores, the wars, plagues, philosophical ambushes, temperamental gods, and ever-present death, let's cut to the chase. Could you hack even one full day in ancient Greece? Realistically, you'd tap out by midday. The relentless sun, the sparse diet, the physical grind of fetching water and walking everywhere on uneven stones. Your modern body and expectations wouldn't stand a chance. You'd crave coffee that doesn't exist, ache for a proper shower, panic at the lack of toilets or painkillers, and probably offend someone powerful with an offhand comment, earning a quick nomination for next year's ostracism. The romantic vision, debating philosophy under olive trees, reclining at symposia, admiring flawless statues, belonged to a tiny elite. For the vast majority, life meant grinding labor, restricted rights, if any, frequent loss, and constant negotiation with unseen forces. Yet somehow, they thrived. They raised temples that awe us millennia later, staged tragedies that still gut-punch audiences, argued questions we haven't settled, charted stars, founded disciplines from biology to ethics. They built enduring beauty and ideas amid sweat, scarcity, and sorrow. You or I might crumple before sunset. But they endured, not because daily life was glamorous, but because they wrestled meaning from hardship. And that is why their legacy still burns bright across centuries. They questioned relentlessly, created fiercely, loved deeply, grieved openly, and in doing so, forged foundations the modern world still stands on. Flawed, brilliant, resilient, the ancient Greeks weren't superhuman. They were all too human, and that's precisely why their legacy burns so bright. And they wouldn't waste time judging your weakness. They'd just toss you a rough wool tunic, nod toward a massive amphora twice your size, and say, "Right then, haul it up the hill. Welcome to the team." It all began with a death and a devastating betrayal. Prasutagus, king of the Iceni tribe, in what we now call Eastern England, had spent years balancing on a knife's edge. As a client king under Rome, he'd played the game masterfully, paying tribute, keeping the peace, staying useful. In return, he kept his wealth, his lands, and a fragile degree of independence. When he died around 60 CE, he thought he'd secured his family's future with a careful will, naming the Roman Emperor Nero as co-heir alongside his two teenage daughters. A final gesture of loyalty, he hoped, that would protect his wife, Queen Boudica, and ensure the Iceni's survival. Rome had other plans. The empire didn't share power. It consumed it. Officials swooped in, declared the will invalid, and annexed the entire kingdom outright. Lands were seized, livestock driven off, treasures looted. Debts supposedly owed to Roman senators were called in with brutal force. Homes confiscated, nobles enslaved. But the worst was yet to come. To crush any lingering resistance, the Romans chose public humiliation. They flogged Boudica herself, stripped and whipped in front of her people like a common criminal. And if that wasn't enough to break her spirit, they raped her daughters in her presence. It was calculated cruelty. Stripped the royal family of dignity, terrorized the tribe into submission, remind everyone that resistance was futile. Rome expected a shattered widow and orphaned princesses. Instead, they created something far more dangerous, a mother whose grief had turned to molten rage. Word of the outrage spread like wildfire across Britannia. Other tribes heard and remembered their own wounds, confiscated fields, crushed rebellions, sons marched off in chains. Rome had always relied on keeping the Britons divided. In one brutal act, they handed Boudica the one thing that could unite them: shared fury. She didn't fade into mourning, she rose from it. Roman writers, who rarely praised their enemies, described her as towering and terrifying, tall, with a harsh voice that carried over crowds like a battle horn, and thick red hair tumbling to her waist. She wasn't just royalty by birth. She became a living symbol of defiance. And now, scarred but unbowed, she set out to turn that symbol into a weapon. Boudica understood something Rome overlooked. The empire's greatest strength wasn't its legions. It was the fear that no one would stand against them. So she gave her people someone to stand with. She started with the neighboring Trinovantes, a once proud tribe crushed under Roman taxes, land grabs, and forced labor for colonial building projects. When Boudica spoke to them, she didn't offer careful diplomacy. She spoke as a mother who'd lost everything, voice raw with pain and promise. She invoked their ancestors, their stolen sacred sites, the gods who still watched from the groves. Her humiliation became theirs. Her refusal to kneel became their own. One by one, other tribes listened. The Corialtavi, the Catuvelauni, even factions of the Brigantes. Her cause grew beyond personal vengeance into something sacred, driving the invaders back into the sea. She promised no easy victory, only the chance to die free rather than live as slaves. And they believed her because she didn't hide behind warriors. She rode at their side, spear in hand, red hair streaming like a war banner. She called on Andrasta, the fearsome Celtic goddess of victory, and her followers swore the goddess answered. Boudica had no Roman military manuals, no engineered siege weapons, but she had something legions couldn't drill into soldiers: righteous, burning hatred sharpened by betrayal. What Rome saw as a minor tribal uprising was becoming something else entirely. A resurrection of British pride, led by a queen they'd foolishly tried to destroy. The Roman eagle had dominated Britannia's skies for years. Now, a storm was gathering beneath its wings. Boudica's growing alliance needed fuel, and the island provided plenty. Generations of resentment, thousands of warriors ready to trade quiet subjugation for one glorious fight. War councils met in ancient oak groves and on windswept hills. Boudica didn't sit elevated on a throne. She stood in the mud with her people, listening to elders, widows, druids, who read victory in the flight of ravens. The Trinovantes brought long memories and sharp slings. The Ixini offered swift chariots and cavalry, painted blue with the woad. Women joined too, inspired by their queen, some wielding spears beside husbands and brothers. Former slaves, who toiled on Roman roads, slipped away to guide rebels through hidden paths. This wasn't a professional army. It was a nation remembering who it had been before the legions arrived. Numbers swelled, tens of thousands, perhaps over 100,000 by Roman estimates. Farmers became fighters overnight. Hunters turned scouts and assassins. They fought not for coin, but for graves their children could visit without bowing to foreign gods. Then came the speeches. Later, Roman historians like Tacitus and Cassius Dio preserved versions of Boudica's words, filtered through enemy bias, yet still powerful. She reminded her warriors of the whips on her back, the violation of her daughters, the chains on their kin. She declared freedom worth more than life, victory worth any price, no surrender, no retreat. Their first target, Camulodunum, modern Colchester. Once a proud British stronghold, it had been transformed into Rome's showcase colony in Britain. Streets laid out in grids, grand public buildings, and at its heart, the towering temple of Claudius, a gleaming insult built by British labor to worship the emperor who'd conquered them. To Boudica's forces, it wasn't holy ground. It was enemy territory begging to burn. Camulodunum fell like dry kindling. The city had no serious walls. Its veterans and settlers had grown complacent behind years of peace. A small garrison and retired legionaries weren't prepared for what hit them. Boudica's warriors poured in without prolonged siege, overwhelming defenses in hours. What followed was merciless. Streets became slaughter grounds. Roman colonists, many former soldiers who'd lorded over local tribes, were cut down alongside families. Buildings torched, statues toppled and smashed. The great temple of Claudius, where panicked defenders made their last stand, was surrounded and set ablaze. Flames consumed the structure over 2 days, roof collapsing in a roar visible for miles. Survivors were few. Those who fled carried nightmare stories south. A red-haired giantess leading howling barbarians who spared no one. The destruction wasn't chaos. It was deliberate erasure of Roman symbols, a message carved in fire and blood. Rome's proud colony lay in smoking ruins, and Boudica's storm was only beginning to break. These were men and women who'd watched their villages razed, their sacred sites desecrated, their loved ones dragged away in chains. Now they were taking it all back with compound interest. Frantic messages flew from Roman outposts to Governor Gaius Suetonius Paulinus, who was deep in Wales quelling yet another uprising. But by the time word of Camulodunum's fall reached him, the city was a smoldering ruin. Colonists massacred, temples toppled. the rebellion's fire leaping higher. Boudica didn't linger for victory feasts. She knew Rome's response would be swift and savage, so she drove her forces onward, each wind feeding their momentum like wind to flames. Next on her path, a bigger prize, a richer target, even more exposed, Londinium. If the empire hadn't feared her yet, they were about to learn. Londinium gleamed as Roman Britain's crown jewel. Barely 2 decades old, it had exploded into a bustling center of commerce and power. Traders from distant provinces hawked silks and spices in its forums. Bureaucrats stamped decrees in grand halls. Gold and grain poured through its docks. But as Boudica's horde thundered closer, prosperity twisted into terror. Suetonius, racing back from the west with a skeletal force, surveyed the city, sprawling, undefended, teeming with civilians. In a cold calculation, he chose retreat. His main legions were scattered too far to rally in time. He couldn't squander his men on a hopeless stand. So he pulled out, urging the able-bodied to flee with him. Left behind, the elderly, the infirm, the doubters who scoffed at tales of a barbarian queen toppling Rome. They wouldn't scoff for long. Boudica's warriors hit Londinium like a breaking dam. No fortifications to storm, no barricades to smash. The city lay open, and they made it pay. Streets turned to killing fields. Romans were yanked from hiding spots. Families cut down without mercy. Some were skewered on stakes, others trapped and burned in their own bathhouses. Mercy wasn't on the menu, only retribution. Homes blazed, storehouses erupted. Smoke towers twisted into the sky, a beacon visible across the countryside. This wasn't mindless rampage. It was calculated fury, erasing every trace of Roman arrogance. Ancient writers like Tacitus and Cassius Dio later tallied the dead in the tens of thousands, the savagery outstripping even Camulodunum's fall. To Romans, it felt like the end of days. Through the chaos rode Boudica herself, chariot thundering, daughters at her side. She didn't command from afar. She witnessed the empire's symbols shatter. For her, this was balance, payback for the lashes on her back, the horror inflicted on her girls, the theft of her people's future. But she wasn't done. Verulamium waited ahead, and beyond it, Rome's inevitable hammer. Rome had crushed uprisings from the sands of Judea to the forests of Gaul. But Boudica, she was something new, a queen without legions or legions of training. Yet she torched 2 key outposts and left thousands dead in her wake. No polished helmet, no Latin orders, just raw defiance. As Verulamium, another thriving, Roman-friendly town northwest of Londinium, met the same fiery end, panic rippled all the way to the Senate. Emperor Nero, they say, toyed with abandoning Britain altogether. Picture it, the world's mightiest empire, stretching from Egyptian pyramids to Alpine peaks, considering pulling out because one red-haired widow had turned humiliation into havoc. Boudica's true strength wasn't sheer force. It was symbolism. Rome preached eternal dominance, but here she was, a broken queen reborn, proving emperors could be defied. Each raised settlement chipped away at that myth. Verulamium burned just as fiercely. Inhabitants slaughtered, forums gutted. The ground scorched so deeply that modern digs still uncover that black ash layer, a permanent testament to the blaze. Yet success bred problems. Boudica's ranks ballooned, but so did chaos. Supply chains stretched thin, discipline frayed amid the euphoria. Tribes reveled, but Rome regrouped. Suetonius didn't flee forever. he mustered his veterans, drawing in reinforcements from across the province. He scouted terrain, plotted angles, aimed for one knockout clash. Even as his men sharpened blades, a whisper of doubt lingered. Could they really stop this whirlwind? Boudica wasn't just fighting, she was reshaping history, showing that empires bleed and the oppressed can bite back. The climax loomed, and all Britannia held its breath. The blaze had raged far, but now it met cold Roman steel. Gaius Suetonius Paulinus picked his ground with a veteran's eye. No foolhardy charge for him. He was a strategist who'd survived worse. While Boudica's followers reveled in triumphs, he plotted in silence. He chose a pinched valley, steep woods and hills on the flanks, funneling attackers into a kill zone where numbers meant nothing. His force, compact, around 10,000 disciplined legionaries and auxiliaries, everyone a professional with shield, javelin, and short sword drilled into muscle memory. Boudica's host dwarfed them. Estimates run to 100,000 or more. But hers was a people's army. Herders with slings, artisans with axes, all fueled by passion but lacking ranks and rigor. They trusted sheer mass to overwhelm like an avalanche. It didn't. Boudica's lines closed in. She delivered her final oration from her chariot, daughters beside her. She recounted the whips, the violations, the plundered homes, the enslaved kin. She summoned Andrasta and the spirits of the dead, swearing triumph or honorable end. The roarback shook the trees. They felt destiny on their side. Then the charge, a howling surge of Britons, weapons high, closing the gap. Suetonius waited, calm. Let them bunch up in the narrows. Then javelins rained in volleys, shredding the front. Shields interlocked, swords thrust in unison. The Britons smashed against an unbreakable barrier, wave after futile wave. When the Romans pushed forward, step, stab, step, the rout began. Boudica's rear was clogged with wagons and onlookers who trailed the army for the spectacle. No escape. Chaos erupted. Warriors trampled kin. Families fled into spears. The valley became a graveyard. By dusk, it was done. Tens of thousands of Britons slain, the rebellion gutted. Rome had wavered but held. Boudica's gamble ended in defeat, yet her defiance outlasted the day. Her own end, lost to time, but her story, eternal. The field fell quiet save for the wounded's cries. Boudica had sparked a blaze that consumed her war. The earth drank her people's blood, their hopes scattered like embers on the wind. And Boudica herself vanished from sight. No eyewitness saw her draw her last breath, and history left her end shrouded in rumor. Roman chroniclers couldn't agree. Tacitus claimed she swallowed poison, a deliberate defiant choice to rob Rome of its triumph, dying free rather than in chains. Cassius Dio suggested illness overtook her in the rebellion's chaotic wake, a quiet fade after the storm. What both accepted, she slipped away unbroken. No defeated queen dragged in shackles through Roman streets. No spectacle execution for cheering crowds. She simply vanished, like thunder, fading into distant hills. In that absence, something powerful took root. Boudica transcended flesh and became legend. Rome, rattled to its core by the near catastrophe, tried to downplay her. Rebuild the cities, repave the roads, pretend the nightmare never happened. But the Britons wouldn't forget. In songs around hearthfires, in tales told under sacred oaks, she lived on. Not as a failed insurgent, but as martyr and near goddess. A fierce protector spirit, a mother who made the mighty tremble. Andrasta's earthly avatar, guardian of the oppressed. Even Roman writers betrayed grudging awe. Tacitus, loyal son of the empire, still portrayed her as a wronged leader of terrifying dignity, wronged by Roman greed and cruelty. Dio lingered on her commanding stature, her voice like rolling thunder, the speeches that rallied nations. They condemned her methods but couldn't hide the respect or the fear. Time only burnished the myth. Through medieval whispers, Renaissance art, Victorian revival, she resurfaced. Poets like Tennyson gave her verse, sculptors cast her in bronze. She became Britain's warrior queen, symbol of resistance against invaders, of feminine strength unbound, of the island's stubborn soul. Today, near Westminster Bridge in London, the very city she once reduced to embers, stands Thomas Thornycroft's dramatic statue. Boudica rears on her scythe chariot, daughters beside her, horses leaping forward in eternal charge. Tourists snap photos. Buses rumble past, oblivious that they're standing where her vengeance once roared. But the bronze captures it perfectly. Eyes fixed ahead, unbowed, unstoppable. She wasn't flawless. Her revolt spilled rivers of blood. Roman civilians, entire families, wiped out in the same merciless fury Rome had shown her people. History doesn't crown saints. It remembers those who refuse to kneel. And resistance, when centuries of grievance finally erupt, is rarely tidy. Yet that's precisely why she endures. Boudica isn't celebrated for perfection, but for possibility. A widow stripped of everything, crown, dignity, children's safety, who still rose, united fractured tribes and forced the greatest empire the world had known to stare into the abyss. Modern scholars pick apart tactics, debate numbers, question sources. But ask any Briton on the street, and the answer comes quick. She was the queen who made Rome pay. The woman who turned grief into thunder. The reminder that no empire is eternal when it forgets the humanity of those it crushes. Rome rebuilt its villas and roads, redrew its maps, marched on, but it never erased her. Her fire still flickers. In every act of defiance, every refusal to submit, every voice that rises against overwhelming odds. Boudica is gone. Her legend charges forever. To the ancients, sickness was never mere accident. Long before microscopes revealed germs or scans mapped tumors, illness carried deeper meaning. A crack in the cosmic order, a ripple across body, spirit, and world. In ancient Mesopotamia, disease often meant divine wrath. Fallen ill? You'd broken a taboo, slighted a god, inherited a curse. Healers doubled as priests, reading omens in sheep livers, chanting exorcisms, blending rituals with poultices. Treatment began with confession and atonement as much as medicine. Ancient China framed it through elegant balance. Yin and yang, the 5 elements flowing in harmony. Too much fire in the heart? Excess yang. A lingering chill in the lungs? Yin dominant. Practitioners probe not just the cough, but the patient's dreams, diet, emotions, season. Acupuncture needles, herbal brews, and lifestyle shifts all aim to restore equilibrium. The body's inner universe realigned with the outer. Hippocrates and his Greek successors pushed toward natural causes, stripping away some superstition. Yet they too chased harmony. The 4 humors, blood, phlegm, yellow bile, black bile, each tied to season, element, temperament. Fever signaled excess blood, melancholy, too much black bile. Bleeding, purging, diet, exercise, all worked to recalibrate. Health wasn't just no pain, it was wholeness. From India's Ayurvedic doshas to indigenous traditions viewing possession or soul loss as root causes, the pattern held. Humans weren't separate from nature or spirit. Disrupt the web, anger the ancestors, pollute a river, harbor unresolved rage, and the body echoed the imbalance. Healing then was restoration. Visible wounds bandaged, invisible fractures mended with prayer, song, or sacrifice. Ancients treated the whole person in their whole world. In the shadow of the pyramids, medicine blended sharp observation with sacred mystery. Egyptian physicians, known as Swanbulyobu, stood as bridges between mortal flesh and immortal gods. Their craft, gifted by Thoth, the ibis-headed scribe, and Imhotep, the deified healer, mixed practical skill with ritual power. Surviving texts like the Ebers Papyrus, circa 1550 BCE, reveal astonishing range. Recipes for migraines, eye infections, digestive woes, even primitive oncology. They splinted fractures, stitched wounds, drilled skulls for head injuries, lanced boils with fire-heated bronze, pulse taking, urine examination, symptom checklists, all routine. Yet no remedy stood alone. Sekhmet, fierce lioness goddess of plague and cure, could send epidemics or stay them. Spells accompanied every bandage, words woven to drive out the breath of death or command demons from the body. Amulets guarded patients, statues of healing deities watched over birthing rooms. Their pharmacopoeia impresses even now. Honey dressed wounds as natural antiseptic, effective against infection long before bacteria had names. Garlic bolstered hearts and fought parasites. Onions eased congestion, juniper, coriander, castor oil, frankincense, all drawn from nature's arsenal. Moldy bread on cuts, an accidental penicillin precursor. Surgery happened under incantation and practical light. Tools cleaned in flame. Patients soothed with opium or mandrake. Childbirth relied on midwives chanting to Hathor or Bes, the dwarf god who scared away evil spirits. Egyptian healers served everyone from laborers to pharaohs. Tutankhamun's court physicians among the most renowned. Foreign kings sent for them when local remedies failed. Knowledge crossed borders freely, blending with Greek and later Roman traditions. Science and sorcery walked hand in hand. To the Egyptians, healing wasn't either or. The body was temple and machine both. Treat it with precision, honor it with reverence. They were, in their own right, pioneers of specialization. Some healers devoted themselves to digestive complaints, others to eye disorders or dental pain, still more to what we'd call mental or spiritual crises. Yet no wall divided the material from the mystical. A raging fever could stem from Nile-borne insects just as easily as from a restless spirit or slighted deity. True healing demanded addressing both, cleansing the body, appeasing the gods, realigning the sufferer's place in the greater order. To an ancient Egyptian, the physician's deepest calling wasn't merely to banish sickness, it was to mend a tear in the fabric of creation itself. Long before sterile labs and randomized trials, India crafted a profound tradition of wellness. One that saw the human form not as isolated machinery, but as a living mirror of the universe. This system, Ayurveda, the science of life in Sanskrit, emerged from Vedic wisdom and became far more than medicine. It was a blueprint for existing in rhythm with the earth, the seasons, the breath, and the spirit. At its heart lie the three doshas, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. Each blends the five great elements, earth, water, fire, air, and ether, in unique proportions. Vata drives movement, breath, circulation, thought. Pitta fuels transformation, digestion, metabolism, intellect. Kapha provides structure and steadiness, bones, tissues, calm. We enter the world with our own innate balance of these forces, our prakriti. Sickness arises when life, wrong foods, chronic stress, harsh weather, suppressed emotions, tips that balance into vikriti. Ancient masterpieces like the Karaka Samhita and Sushruta Samhita, compiled over 2 millennia ago, read like encyclopedias of insight. Karaka emphasized internal medicine and prevention above all. Daily routines, seasonal diets, ethical living as the first shield against disease. Sushruta, the surgical luminary, catalogued more than 300 procedures and over 120 instruments. Knives, probes, forceps, fashioned from steel or wood. His rhinoplasty technique, rebuilding a nose with a pedicle flap from the cheek or forehead, was performed not for vanity, but to restore dignity to those whose faces had been mutilated as criminal punishment. Western surgeons wouldn't match it until the 18th century. Yet Ayurveda's true brilliance shines in its refusal to fragment the self. Body, mind, and spirit heal together. Remedies span herbal preparations, turmeric for inflammation, ashwagandha for resilience, holy basil for clarity, yoga postures, controlled breathing, pranayama, warm oil massages, abhyanga, therapeutic cleansing, and mindful fasting. A skilled Vaidya might treat chronic headaches not only with herbs but by adjusting sleep cycles, soothing buried anger, and reigniting the digestive fire known as Agni. Ayurveda whispers an eternal truth. You are not apart from nature. You are nature, breathing. Illness is simply nature's gentle or fierce reminder to come home to balance. In ancient China, health hinged on something invisible yet vital. Kui, the life force pulsing through every creature and landscape. Block it, overfill it, weaken it, and suffering follows. Keeping qi flowing freely became the cornerstone of traditional Chinese medicine, TCM, one of the world's oldest unbroken healing lineages. Chinese physicians studied the world first, the cycle of seasons, the waxing moon, the migration of birds, the turning heavens. From those rhythms arose yin and yang, complementary opposites, and the 5 phases: wood, fire, earth, metal, water. Yin embodies coolness, darkness, receptivity, inwardness. Yang brings heat, light, activity, expansion. Every organ, emotion, season, even flavor aligns with one side or the other. Yet true health demands their constant dance. Diagnosis was intimate and subtle. No machines, just keen senses. A practitioner studied the tongue's coat and color, felt the pulse in multiple depths and positions, each revealing a different organ story. Noted voice timbre, skin luster, dreams, moods, digestion. Everything spoke of Ki's state. Treatment drew from a rich arsenal. Acupuncture guided thin needles into meridian points to redirect or unblock qi. Moxibustion warmed those points with burning mugwort. Cupping drew stagnation to the surface. Herbal formulas, intricate blends tailored to the patient's pattern, restored harmony. Tai Chi and Qigong moved qi through gentle motion. Diet shifted with seasons and constitution. The Huangdi Neijing, the Yellow Emperor's inner classic, compiled around 2000 years ago, remains TCM's bedrock. It explores not just symptoms but roots. How unchecked anger injures the liver, excessive grief the lungs, fear the kidneys. Healing, therefore, touches emotion and spirit alongside flesh. Chinese medicine never isolated the patient from the cosmos. Climate, relationships, purpose all influence Kui. The healer's art was to listen to that silent river within and guide it back to effortless flow. In the sunlit temples of Greece and the bustling streets of Rome, medicine began tilting toward observation and logic. Yet, even here, balance remained king, this time in the form of four humors that would dominate Western thought for centuries. Hippocrates, the father of rational medicine, and later Galen, the prolific Roman-Greek physician, taught that health rested on equilibrium among blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile, each tied to an element: air, water, fire, earth, and a temperament: sanguine, phlegmatic, choleric, melancholic. Excess or deficiency sparked disease. A hot-tempered fever, too much yellow bile, lethargy and pallor. Phlegm overload, treatments aimed to rebalance: bloodletting, emetics, purgatives, soothing baths, tailored diets. Hippocrates urged close watching of patients. Note the winds, water sources, seasons, even state of mind. His famous oath, "First, do no harm," still binds doctors today. Healing temples called Asclepiae dotted the Greek world, serene complexes where patients bathed, exercised, ate cleanly, and slept in dormitories hoping for dream visitations from Asclepius himself. Snakes slithered freely as sacred symbols. Theater and music soothed the spirit. Reason and reverence shared the space. Galen, treating gladiators and emperors, dissected animals, human autopsy being taboo, mapped anatomy, and codified humoral theory across the empire. His volumes survived the fall of Rome, shaping medicine through the Middle Ages. Greco-Roman practice nudged healing toward the empirical. The body as a knowable system, amenable to thoughtful intervention. God still hovered, but human understanding began to share the stage. Before scrolls and universities, indigenous peoples worldwide tended health through intimate kinship with land, ancestors, and spirit. Medicine wasn't a specialty, it was communal wisdom, carried in stories, songs, visions, and generations of careful observation. Among many Native American nations, healers, often called medicine men or women, served as bridges between worlds. They treated broken bones with splints and poultices, eased childbirth with herbs and ritual, countered infection with bark teas. But their work reached deeper, restoring harmony when illness signaled spiritual imbalance, community discord, or environmental disrespect. Sweat lodges purified body and soul. Vision quests sought guidance. Sacred plants like tobacco, sage, sweetgrass, or peyote opened doors to insight and healing. Drums, rattles, and chants realigned energy. Every remedy acknowledged relationship to plants, animals, elements, ancestors. Illness often meant a soul piece had wandered or been stolen. Soul retrieval ceremonies called it home. Dreams revealed causes. Offerings mended broken bonds with the earth. These traditions vary immensely across tribes. Navajo hatawising intricate sand paintings into being. Lakota Wikasa, Wakan invoke buffalo spirit. Inuit Angakuk journey shamanically. Yet the core endures. Humans thrive only in right relation. Healing restores that web. They were far more than doctors. They were visionaries, mediators between worlds, custodians of stories that carried centuries of wisdom. Healing wasn't confined to the body. It often meant mending frayed bonds with the land, the community, the ancestors, or the fractured self. Sickness signaled deeper discord, and restoration demanded ceremony as much as remedy. Plants formed the backbone of this knowledge. Tribes across the Americas knew their territories intimately. Willow bark chewed for aches, its salicin a natural aspirin precursor. Yarrow leaves staunched bleeding. Echinacea roots bolstered immunity against colds. Sacred smokes of sage, cedar, sweetgrass, and tobacco cleared negative energies in smudging rites, purifying spaces and spirits alike. But no herb worked alone. Its power amplified by song, prayer, gratitude offered to the plant before harvest. Sweat lodges steamed away impurities of body and soul. Vision quests isolated seekers in nature until guidance arrived. Drumming circles synchronized heartbeats, calling harmony back. Some ailments traced to soul loss, trauma scattering a person's essence, or breaches of taboo inviting misfortune. Soul retrieval journeys, led by shamans in trance, sang the wandering piece home through rattle, chant, and dance. This reverence echoes worldwide. Amazonian shamans brew ayahuasca, a potent vine and leaf elixir, not for escape, but for profound teaching. Under its guidance, visions uncover buried grief, addiction's roots, or spiritual blockages, allowing deep purge and renewal. The plants themselves are conscious allies, whispering truths. In Australia's Aboriginal traditions, bush medicine draws from eucalyptus for respiratory relief, kangaroo apple for skin sores, spinifex resin as antiseptic. Healing ties to dreamtime, the eternal creation era, through songlines mapping sacred paths across the land. Balance means alignment with country, kin, and ancestral law. These ways weren't scribbled in texts. They pulsed in oral traditions, dances, art on rock and bark. The earth was, and remains, the original apothecary. Indigenous healers remind us, conquering disease misses the point. True medicine rekindles belonging. Across ancient cultures, one truth bound them all. Healing transcended flesh. It reached into the invisible, spirit, cosmos, unseen forces. Rituals weren't decoration, they were the bridge. In ancient Mesopotamia, demons or displeased deities often bore blame for affliction. Clay tablets preserve incantations recited over salves, protective figurines buried under thresholds to bar evil. Exorcists and Asu healers collaborated. Magic banished the intruder. Herbs soothed the damage. Egyptian physicians invoked Thoth or Sekhmet before every intervention. Spells commanded infection to flee as honey sealed wounds. Maintaining Maat, cosmic truth and order, was the ultimate cure. Illness meant its disruption, healing its restoration. African sangomas and Ngangas divine through bones or trance, consulting ancestors first. Drumming propels them into spirit realms to negotiate, bargain, or battle on the patient's behalf. Herbs follow guidance from beyond. Even rational Greece retained ritual. Asclepiaea welcomed sufferers for purification baths, temple offerings, therapeutic theater. In Abaton dormitories, they incubated dreams beside the god's statue, non-venomous snakes gliding as emissaries. Priests interpreted visions to prescribe remedies, meaning transformed suffering into sacred narrative. Ritual gave structure to chaos, community to isolation, agency to fear. Modern studies on placebo, mindfulness, and psychoneuroimmunology validate what ancients knew instinctively. Belief shapes biology. Intention influences outcome. A chant, a shared circle, a symbolic act can reach wounds no scalpel touches. Not every cut is skin deep, and not every cure comes in a vial. We picture ancient surgery as barbaric. Screams echoing, blood everywhere, survival a coin toss. Reality reveals steadier hands and bolder minds than we'd guess. India's Sushruta, over 2,000 years ago, authored a surgical marvel. His Samhita outlines hundreds of operations. Cataract gouging, displacing clouded lenses. Hernia repairs, cesarean sections, lithotomy for bladder stones. His rhinoplasty, flaps of cheek skin grafted to rebuild, noses lost to punishment or war, remained unmatched in Europe until the Renaissance. Instruments numbered over 120. Lancets shaped like animals, magnetic probes for extracting arrows, fine needles for sutures. Hygiene mattered, tools boiled, wounds cleaned with herbal astringents, patients prepped with calming oils. Egypt left surgical papyri and tools in tombs, bronze scalpels, drills, saws. They trepanned skulls to ease pressure from trauma. Evidence of regrown bone, proving survival rates that impress today. Abscesses drained, fractures immobilized with linen splints and honey dressings. In the Andes, Inca and pre-Inca, surgeons mastered trepanation too. Multiple holes sometimes bored in one skull, with patients living years afterward. Coca leaves chewed for local numbing, chicha beer for sedation, antimicrobial plants preventing infection. Greco-Roman advances shown on battlefields. Military surgeons ligated vessels, amputated with speed, cauterized with hot iron. Galen, dissecting Barbary apes and treating gladiators, mapped nerves and muscles, influencing practice for 1,500 years. No general anesthesia, no sterile fields, yet these pioneers operated with reverence, turning invasion into salvation. Their blades weren't weapons, but lifelines, wielded by those who dared enter the body's mystery. We inhabit an era of MRI precision, robotic arms, CRISPR edits. Diagnoses arrive in minutes. Treatments cross continents instantly. Yet ancient echoes linger softly. Ayurvedic clinics thrive globally. Acupuncture needles find meridians in Western hospitals. Smudging with white sage clears rooms before indigenous patients' procedures. Medical graduates still swear variants of the Hippocratic Oath. Surgical theaters trace instrument designs to Sushruta's catalogs. Holistic wards embrace mind-body links the ancients never doubted. Studies now quantify how loneliness harms like smoking, how meditation reshapes neural pathways, validating what Vedic rishis, Chinese sages, and tribal elders lived. Modern medicine conquers infections and maps genomes, but ancients remind us, healing is relationship with ourselves, each other, the living earth. Their legacy isn't relics, it's perspective. In our rush for cures, we rediscover their truth. Wholeness over patchwork, harmony over dominance. The circle turns. Science and spirit, once split, begin speaking again. And in that conversation, perhaps, the deepest healing begins. Forest bathing, Shinrin-yoku in Japanese, rooted in Shinto reverence and indigenous earth connection, now earns prescriptions for stress and anxiety. The placebo effect, that stubborn miracle fueled by belief alone, still baffles scientists who once waved it away as mere trickery. Easy to dismiss ancient ways as quaint relics. Chants over wounds, needles in invisible channels, leaves brewed under moonlight. But look deeper, and a wiser picture emerges. The ancients didn't see the body as a faulty gadget awaiting repair. Illness was a message, a rift in the greater web of existence, harmony lost between person and season, spirit and soil, heart and world. Healing then wasn't conquest, it was restoration. Meaning mattered as much as method. A poultice soothed skin, but ritual soothed fear. A song steadied breath, but story steadied the soul. They understood instinctively what we rediscover in studies. Being witnessed, believed, held in ceremony can shift biology itself. Comfort, context, connection. These were medicine too. As we rocket toward gene edits, AI diagnostics, neural implants, we don't abandon the old world. We circle back to it, armed with sharper tools, yet carrying the same ancient ache. For balance, for wholeness, for mending not just flesh, but the fragile human spirit beneath. Her name floats through time like a half-forgotten song on the wind. Sappho, born around 630 BCE on the island of Lesbos, whose verses once drifted across lamplit rooms and open-air gatherings, wrapping listeners in raw feeling. No armored heroes or thundering gods filled her lines. She conquered nothing but the heart. In an era of epic battles and marble monuments to male glory, Sappho's power was quieter, deeper. She turned fleeting emotion into something eternal. A blush, a sigh, the ache of absence preserved like petals pressed between pages. Almost nothing solid remains of her life. No likeness carved in stone, no letters, no biography. Just fragments, lines quoted by later admirers, scraps of papyrus unearthed from Egyptian rubbish heaps, echoes embedded in others' works. Yet those shards gleam. Plato honored her as the 10th muse. Generations of poets, men and women alike, have chased her shadow, translating, imagining, longing to complete the melody she began. She likely came from aristocracy on Lesbos, an Aegean island rich in olive groves and lyric tradition. Details blur. Brothers, perhaps a daughter named Claes, political exile to Sicily amid factional strife. Turmoil touched her life, yet song defined it. In a world that muffled most women's voices beyond the threshold, Sappho sang freely, not in defiance, but in effortless truth. She wrote in the melodic Aeolic dialect, crafting short, vivid lyrics meant for voice and lyre. Simple words, precise images. The evening star gathering what dawn scattered, apple trees heavy with unreachable fruit, desire that leaves the tongue thick and skin aflame. Her verses outlasted empires because they feel immediate, as if whispered yesterday. Much vanished, burned in library fires, decayed in desert sands, ignored or suppressed. But what survives proves her monument was never stone. It was language itself, carrying feeling across millennia. When we speak of love's sharp joy and sharper pain, we still walk paths she first illuminated. To know Sappho, begin with Lesbos, the island that breathed through her poetry. Far from a forgotten outpost, Lesbos thrived as a cultural jewel. Fertile hills, harbors alive with trade, cities humming with music and ideas. Mytilene, its vibrant capital, swirled with politics, philosophy, and art. Poetry wasn't ornament, it was essential, woven into festivals, symposia, religious rites. Here, lyric flourished, personal, melodic, meant for performance rather than silent scrolls. The lyre's gentle pluck accompanied voices raised in celebration or confession. Sappho grew in this atmosphere, where sound and sea and sentiment mingled freely. Lesbos offered something rarer still, space for women's creative community. Aristocratic daughters learned music, dance, poetry, grace, preparation for marriage, yes, but also for beauty's sake and devotion to Aphrodite. Many scholars see Sappho leading a Thiassos, a circle of young women, gathered not as formal academy, but as sacred sisterhood. They composed, performed, honored the goddess of love together. Her poems speak directly to these companions, naming them, missing them when they married and left, praising their hair, their laughter, the way garlands framed their faces. Intimate, tender, sometimes aching with desire. These weren't abstract ideals but real presences. Friends, students, beloveds, sharing songs under starlight. Later ages twisted this into scandal or stereotype. Yet in context, it was simply life on Lesbos. Women claiming space for emotion, artistry, connection in a world that granted them little. The island wasn't just backdrop. It was muse, cradle, heartbeat. Sappho didn't merely inhabit Lesbos. She became its truest voice. While Homer roared of Trojan wars and Odysseus' cunning, Sappho turned inward. No distant gods or battlefield glory, just the tremor of feeling in an ordinary moment. She pioneered the deeply personal I in Western poetry, not recounting myth but confessing experience. Love's wildfire, jealousy's quiet knife, the way a beloved's voice could unsettle knees and speech alike. And she wrote as woman to women, unapologetically. In a culture where respectable women stayed shadowed, Sappho stepped into light, not shouting defiance, but singing truth. Her verses named real girls: Athis, Anactoria, Gongila. She recalls their perfume, their departing ships, the ache of watching one sit close to a man. That man seems to me equal to gods. Jealousy, wonder, longing, all laid bare without shame. Physical desire mingles with reverence. Skin glowing like moonlight, breath caught at beauty's nearness. Erotic, yet never crude. Sensual, yet sacred. Later, eras struggled with her frankness. Some editors Baudelarized, others invented tragic leaps from cliffs over unrequited love for a man. A myth likely born of comedic misunderstanding. But the fragments resist erasure. They speak of love between women with clarity and grace, celebrating bonds emotional, intellectual, physical. Sappho didn't theorize desire. She lived it, shaped it into art that still quickens pulses today. Sappho's poems weren't meant for quiet pages. They were music, breath, and string and voice intertwined. Lyric poetry, her chosen form, drew its name from the lyre itself. Small, handheld, intimate. Verses short and song-like, designed for solo or small group performance at gatherings, weddings, religious rites. Accompanied by gentle plucking, her words floated like incense. Personal confessions offered publicly, yet feeling private. She mastered meter now called sapphic stanza. 3 longer lines followed by a short. A rhythm that sways like waves on Lesbos shores. Simple, vivid imagery. Roses of Perea, golden sandals of dawn, apples reddening high on branches. Her themes circle love's many faces. Ecstasy, abandonment, memory's sweet sting. One famous fragment describes desire's physical rush. Heart pounding, tongue tied, fire beneath skin, vision blurring, as if love itself were gentle seizure. Fragments survive because later writers cherished them. Quoted in rhetoric manuals, scribbled in margins, wrapped around Egyptian mummies as papyrus packing. Even broken, they move us. A few lines about missing a friend's laughter or pleading with Aphrodite to ease heartache feel startlingly modern. She composed hymns too, calling on the goddess of love as ally, not distant power. Aphrodite descends in dove-drawn chariot, smiling, asking whom Sappho wishes one this time. Playful, familiar, human. Though most of her 9 books are lost, the surviving sparks prove her genius. Emotion distilled to essence, universal yet intimately hers. Lyric poetry begins with her. Not epic noise, but soul's quiet and sometimes thunderous song. Her verses were shaped in the soft, flowing Aeolic Greek of her island, a dialect that lent itself to melody, with elongated vowels and gentle rhythms that felt like waves lapping at Lesbos shores. Her signature form, the sapphic stanza, moved like breath itself. 3 longer lines building tension, then a short, sharp forth like a held sigh released at last. Subtle, hypnotic, perfect for the intimate spaces where she shared them. She performed surrounded by women, companions, pupils, perhaps devotees in Aphrodite's circle. These gatherings, whether sacred rites, creative haven, or tender sisterhood, offered rare freedom. Here, song, body, and heart intertwined without apology. Sappho didn't just recite, she taught others to weave emotion into verse, fostering a living tradition of women's voices raised in harmony. We can only dream of the sound, the lyre's delicate twang under skilled fingers, her voice rising clear and unhurried. Listeners hushed as each word hung in the air like incense. Her poems often begin as invitations, questions to the gods, pleas to lovers, conversations with desire itself. Come to me once more, immortal Aphrodite, shimmering in your golden chariot. No distant worship. This was familiar, urgent, human. Her lines bridge millennia because they feel spoken yesterday. Set them to modern strings, and the ache remains raw. Love as both balm and storm. Beauty fleeting yet worth every pang. Sappho didn't intellectualize feeling. She made it music. And in that alchemy, she taught us that every tremor of the heart deserves its own melody, one still humming softly through time. For every fragment we cherish today, countless more lie lost, dozens, hundreds, perhaps entire books swallowed by history. What survives arrives as shards. A full stanza here, a lone phrase there, words torn from their songs like petals scattered by wind. Yet even these broken edges cut deep, glowing with the fire of what once burned whole. Why the loss? Time's slow erosion, war's chaos, deliberate erasure. Her 9 volumes graced Alexandria's great library, copied and cherished across the classical world. But fires, accidental and intentional, claimed much ancient wisdom. As Christianity rose, works deemed too pagan, too sensual, too frank about desire fell from favor. Sappho's celebrations of love between women made her especially vulnerable. Manuscripts gathered dust, then vanished. By the Middle Ages, she was a name without a voice. Survival came through chants. Lines quoted in grammar texts, rhetorical manuals, philosophical asides, preserved for craft, not passion, yet passion seeped through anyway. Then came miracles from the sands. Late 19th and early 20th century digs at Oxyrhynchus unearthed papyrus scraps wrapped around mummies or discarded in ancient trash heaps, verses unseen for centuries. In 2004, a Cologne papyrus yielded a near-complete poem on aging and memory. Each find feels like resurrection, a voice pulled from silence. The fragmentation suits her in a poignant way. She wrote of transience, roses fading, youth slipping, moments impossible to hold. Her work reaches us not as polished monument, but as exquisite ruin, a mosaic inviting us to fill gaps with our own longing. What we crave isn't just recovered text, but the uninterrupted flow history denied her. Still, the embers endure, proof that even ashes can warm the heart. Sappho's honesty was always too bright for comfort. In her lifetime, admiration flowed freely. Poets envied her skill, audiences swayed to her songs, Plato crowned her the 10th muse. Yet, as eras shifted, her light drew shadows. Her sin, writing desire without disguise, especially desire for women. She praised their grace, grieved their marriages, confessed how proximity stole breath and speech. In archaic Lesbos, such bonds among women carried no stigma. They were woven into rituals, friendships, the fabric of aristocratic life. Later, cultures recoiled. Roman moralists caricatured. Christian authorities suppressed. Medieval scribes let her manuscripts rot. Renaissance translators blurred pronouns, softened edges. Victorians, uneasy with female passion, invented the cliff leap legend. Heartbroken Sappho plunging from Leucadian rocks over a man named Fane. A tidy tragedy aligning her with heterosexual norms. Yet no ancient source supports it, likely born from comedic misunderstanding or deliberate reframing. Some recast her circle as chaste pedagogy. Others branded her immoral. Her openness threatened norms, so norms rewrote her. Yet she resisted erasure. In the 19th century, as whispers of same-sex love sought language, sapphic and lesbian, entered lexicon, gifts from her name and island, quiet codes for the uncodable. She became ancestor to queer expression, symbol of love that refuses shame. Debates linger. Who was she really? Teacher, lover, both, neither? But the deeper question, why does her truth still unsettle? Sappho didn't seek scandal. She sought accuracy, naming beauty where she found it, voicing ache without apology. Her radical act was authenticity. History tried to hush her. Her words keep speaking anyway. No figure looms larger in Sappho's world than Aphrodite, goddess of love, beauty, irresistible pull. To Sappho, she wasn't remote myth, but intimate ally. Confidant in heartache, accomplice in joy. Many poems are direct addresses, prayers, pleas, playful negotiations when desire overwhelmed. The surviving Ode to Aphrodite stands as masterpiece. Sappho summons the goddess in her dove-drawn chariot, recounting past rescues, begging intervention now. Aphrodite answers smiling, asking whom to charm this time. Familiar, almost teasing, divine power made approachable through shared experience of love's turmoil. Sappho presents desire as sacred, not shameful. Love's fire, its trembling, its cruelty, all worthy of heavenly attention. Love shook my heart like wind crashing through mountain oaks. No gentle Cupid here. Love as elemental force shaking foundations. By framing passion as worship, she sanctifies the everyday. A glance, a garland, skin brushed by moonlight. Human and divine blur. Aphrodite mirrors mortal complexity. Generous yet capricious. Soothing yet stirring storms. Sappho's verses turn longing into liturgy. Love isn't trivial pursuit. It's cosmic dance, worth invoking immortals. In her lines, the goddess doesn't judge, she understands. And through that understanding, Sappho grants us permission. Feel deeply, speak truly, offer heartache as holy. Like much of her life, Sappho's end drifts in mist. No reliable record of date, manner, or place. Some imagined peaceful fade on Lesbos, surrounded by sea sounds and fading songs. Others clung to later fictions. The dramatic leap from Leucadian cliffs, despairing over mythical ferryman Fane. That tale, absent from her era's sources, likely arose from Roman comedy or moral convenience, recast in a woman who loved women as conventionally tragic heroine pining for a man. Neater for posterity, but false. Truth seems quieter. After exile and return, political storms and creative flowering, she simply slipped away, perhaps in old age, perhaps sooner. Her work endured centuries after, studied, performed, treasured in Alexandria's scrolls. For a while, her renown rivaled Homer's. 9 books of lyrics circulated widely. Then tides turned. Roman sensibilities cooled toward her sensuality. Christian ascendants condemned pagan passion. Manuscripts ceased being copied, libraries burned or decayed. Some say church fathers ordered her works destroyed as immoral. By Middle Ages, she was legend without text. Rediscovery came slowly. Medieval quotations, then 19th century papyrus hauls from Egyptian sites, verses recycled as mummy wrapping or landfill. Each scrap a small miracle. She didn't need dramatic exit. Her poems already defied mortality. Gaps where full songs once lived now hold space for wonder, the shape of what endures when much is lost. Sappho vanished gently, but never completely. Her spirit lingers in every unfinished longing her words evoke. Her life may dissolve into legend, her canon into fragments, yet Sappho's reach only expands, like light refracted through broken glass, brighter for the scatter. Renaissance humanists pored over rescued lines, awed by her precision. Romantics like Byron felt kinship in her intensity. As modern voices sought models for women's creativity and queer love, she resurfaced, beacon of authenticity. Her name birthed words we live by. Sapphic for woman-loving woman poetry and passion. Lesbian from her island home, now global identity. These aren't accidents, they're inheritance. Artists keep returning. Painters envision her lyre lit by moon. Composers set fragments to new music. Novelists reimagine her circle. Some historical, some boldly speculative. Translators wrestle afresh, chasing her elusive music in modern tongues. She endures because her themes transcend era. Love's sharp sweetness, beauty's brief bloom, memory's tender ache. A few lines. Someone will remember us, I say, even in another time. Feel prophetic, spoken across abyss directly to us. Sappho didn't build empires or lead armies. She mapped the heart with unflinching tenderness. In doing so, she became mirror. For anyone who's loved fiercely, lost quietly, found words when silence threatened to swallow feeling whole. As long as hearts quicken at a glance, stutter at a name, or mend through melody, Sappho remains, not merely remembered, but alive. Her voice, though fractured, still sings, and in its song, we hear our own.